Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, Dr. Mary.
Happy Tuesday to you, Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we should just jump right into it. It was a good thing I came across this morning that we're excited about. My college friend, Robyn Wick, posted this. She works at the U of M, I think in the business, Carlson School of Business. And she posted this thing on a growth mindset, which, is applicable for all stages and phases of our lives. I was just on a big call yesterday with the coach, Jeffrey Shaw, put together a 2-day retreat. And I think I've talked about him a little bit. He wrote this book, The Self-Employed Life, which I loved. If you follow my Dana Del Val stuff, you've maybe heard me talk about it. But he had people on yesterday talking about growth mindset. Obviously, it's an entrepreneurial thing. It's a, manifestation thing. But I think it's also an addiction thing.
It is. I mean, the 12 promises, the 12 steps, it's a self-improvement guide right there.
Yeah. And, if you look at something from the negative, you can easily find the negative, which means the converse must be true. If you look at something from the positive, you're likely to find the positive. So we're going to show you the image that Robyn put up. And this I'm very excited about, Dr. Mary. So when I was little, I wanted to be Barbara Walters. I thought her hair was amazing. I mean, if you go back to the 80s, late 70s or 80s, she had amazing hair. Her clothes were great. I kind of liked her weird accent. She felt very glamorous to me, and I loved her job. So this takes me one step closer to being Barbara Walters, which I'm quite excited about. Oh, look at that.
That is fantastic.
Amazing. All right, so I'm going to move this way.
Come this way a bit, Satan.
And we're going to talk about growth mindset. So Robyn, thanks for sharing this. So you can read these for yourselves, but we don't need to go through all of them. But are there any of these that really resonated for you?
Oh, the second from last one, straight off the top of the head. The instead of thinking in the red area there, I don't like challenges. It's what I even said this myself right at the start of rehab. I said, Jesus is hard. And then I immediately got back. Of course it's hard. It's rehab. To think of challenges make me better. Addressing what's wrong is the hardest thing to do for anyone.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like a Hallmark movie, but it's moral courage, integrity. Helps keep you going.
Say more, because that doesn't sound like a Hallmark movie. That sounds like good life lessons.
Yeah, if you just give up. You say, well, I can't do. I mean, desert rats give up. If you corner a desert rat, it'll just die.
Why?
They just do. If they can't find a way out, they just die.
Oh, okay.
So you don't want to be that. You've got to sit there and you've got to regroup and you've got to think. You've got to reach out for help. I can't do this, or I don't like this. Well, what can you do to make this better? Because you need to do this.
Yeah. I think this has been such an interesting process. And I really believe that our guest more than a year ago now, Lana Whiting, was the first person I ever heard say, I don't ascribe to the phrase, I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to go to AA. I don't want the shame and the guilt associated with that. So I found a different way to get sober and to maintain that quality of life. And then we've heard other people, certainly throughout these weeks, as guests talk about it. And we've talked about the lunch we had in LA with Alex Kaplan from Of Substance, who was a guest, and Dr. Adi Jaffe, who we hope will be a guest. But this one really resonates for me in light of the way I'm evolving my thinking about drinking for people who have an alcohol problem. I'm afraid of making a mistake. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. I'm afraid of making a mistake. I feel like that really speaks to the shame and the guilt associated with AA. Now, I want to say this, and then you can say something if you want to talk about it, since AA is your program, not mine. You talk so often about how great that environment is because there's no judgment, which I absolutely believe and hear you saying. But there must be an overarching component or overlay of shame, because I think that's why you don't ever really allow me to say, I think I contributed to this. There's something about that. I must take all ownership. I must absolutely face this, confront it, and say, this was on me, which is both admirable and perhaps damaging. So back to, I'm afraid of making a mistake. That feels very AA to me. I can't screw up, or I have to go all the way back to the beginning. Think this: mistakes are how I learn and get better. That speaks to this notion that Adi and Alex have, even though Alex has chosen a life of absolute sobriety. That speaks to this notion of moderation. Michelle Perrone talked about moderation. And I think some others have too. Jennifer last week might have as well. This idea that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. For some people, perhaps it does. For you, perhaps it does.
Yeah.
We don't know. But there is space in this continuum to say, I made a mistake. Here's what I learned, and I'm getting better, as opposed to, I'm a terrible person. Because if you are somebody who operates well under shame, which, P.S., I operate incredibly well under shame, then you might absorb the shame of screwing up, messing up so badly that rather than admitting to it, you pull the desert rat approach and just do yourself in.
There is that too. I mean, that does unfortunately happen.
Yeah, it's alarming. I'm curious. We're curious to know. I'm sorry that I always start from singular when I'm asking questions of the group. We are curious to know if any of these resonate with you.
Well, there's another one here. Good
morning, John.
This. I hear this in AA. Of course, in my day job, I hear this all the time. I don't know how you could flip that around to. I can learn how.
Think of all the things we do in our lives that we don't know how to do till we've done them. I know we've talked about this, but what if every time a toddler, a baby who was learning to walk, what if the first time they fell down, they were consumed with shame, they were belittled by other people? What if as a parent you did this? What's the matter with you? You just take the next step and the next step. You don't fall down. Nobody would do that.
I think there may be some parents out there that do that.
Not the parents that count. So why in the world are we so intolerant of grown-ups who don't know how to do something, or who make a mistake, or who misstep and have to admit it and try again? Why wouldn't we joyfully celebrate that? And I say that with the understanding that if Maz had been in and out of rehab 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12 times, perhaps my tolerance, joy, and support would be dwindling at best, dwindled at worst. So I don't say this cavalierly. I recognize that we've been through this journey once.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the top one, actually.
All right. Say more.
Top one, instead of thinking, I can't do it, think this instead. I'm still learning. I'll keep trying.
We had
not everyone does everything correct the first time. I mean, there's life lessons and axioms and God knows what else you want to call them throughout every culture on this planet.
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
Rabbi Burns to Confucius, who may have been the one who said, if you fall down 7 times, stand up 8.
Yeah. We had an interesting experience sort of like this. Sunday, we went to the new Hornbachers for a little outing. The one, it's not that new, but it's, I think, the newest one off of Cheyenne in
So
West
if you ever
Fargo.
wonder what 50 plus people do in North Dakota on a Sunday, now you know. We go to
It's
new grocery
amazing.
stores.
And we walk it up and down every aisle because we can, and it's fun. Anyway, they have a liquor store attached to the store, which I don't quite understand
And a
how that
pharmacist.
happened, but whatever. Yeah, all grocery stores have pharmacies, except our little one.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, we're in the liquor store and we saw a new NA beer. What was it? Coors?
Yes.
Coors non-alcoholic beer. And
Well, I've never had Coors before. I never drank it. ever.
so Maz bought a 6-pack and we took it home and he opened it and I smelled it and I swear to you, it smelled like nothing. I'm not even sure it smelled like water. And he said, try it. So I took a drink. Wow, it tasted like nothing.
Yeah, it's.
Wow.
I don't know if it's supposed to. Maybe they've nailed it, and that's what Coors actually tastes like. I don't know. I've
It
never had
kind
a
of
Coors.
looks like water from Western North Dakota that's got that little bit of rust color to it. It's not very appealing. It sure tastes like nothing. But the point is, we're still learning. We're trying new stuff in the NA realm because it's evolving and it's getting better and different, and they're trying things too.
There's this one here, about halfway down. Instead of thinking they are better at this than I am, think, what can I learn from them?
Again, that can only happen if you're willing to come forward. And it only needs to be as public as an AA meeting. And don't forget, the second A is anonymous, but you still have to be willing to go forward and walk through the door. Remember we listened to that podcast off the East Coast last year, and we heard a man who was a guest talk about the fact that he went to 4 or 5 AA meetings and was paralyzed in his car. He watched people walking in, he was parked, and it took him 4 or 5 times before he was brave enough to get out of the car and walk through the door. Well, again, how many times in your life have you used alcohol to give you the courage you need to walk through the door? How many guests have we talked to, including you, who've said, I never felt confident about myself. I was a lot braver. I was a lot more fun with a few drinks in me. It's the exact same thing in sobriety. They're better at it than I am. What can you learn from someone else? That can only happen if you're willing to get brave and go through the door, open your mouth, make an admittance. So I love this list. Robyn, thanks for sharing it.
That is a good job.
Anything else?
How
about I give up? Did we discuss that one?
I did.
Okay, sorry. Anything else?
I mean, they all come to the same point, really. It's, I've in the 5 years I've begun at AA, I've only seen this happen twice, where someone just walked in off the street and said, "Hey, I have a problem." Now that, speaking of courage and integrity, there are many ways to have courage and integrity, but that's a great example of someone who has it.
Yeah.
That is courage to come into a room when you're not even in a program or recovering and enjoying sobriety. Just right at the start, you walk into a room full of strangers.
Yeah, I think sometimes we think courage has to mean an absence of fear.
No.
I think courage is being afraid and doing it anyway.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's an incredibly courageous thing to do. So I like this little guy. I love these little blobby, sad and happy brains or
like
whatever they are. They're super
They're probably
cute.
supposed to be brains, I think.
Yeah, maybe. They kind of look like if I had to draw the brain. But at any rate, I think they're really, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 great mindsets to shift from this to this. Oh, I love so much that I played Barbara Walters today. That was very fun.
It's very, very fun.
We are doing a pre-record conversation on Thursday with a husband who is the alcoholic. I believe he's in sobriety now. We're talking to him tomorrow night. And then his wife's going to join us live next week. But the little bit that we already know about him, I think is going to lend itself to a remarkable conversation. I'll just tell you this. One of the things that they wrote to us to say was that they've had an impossible time finding a treatment place because he's not a bad enough alcoholic. So that seems impossible. Somebody wanting help and not being able to get it, that feels terrible. So we're going to learn more about that on Thursday, but it will be a pre-record. So we hope you tune in at 8:30. We'll see you back here live next Tuesday at 8:30. Have a great day.
See you next week.
See ya.